Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's event on behalf of the Stimson Center. My name is Julia Neer, and I'm a research analyst in the Strategic Foresight Hub at Stimson, where I lead our AI policy portfolio. I'm also the program lead for our Responsible AI Fellowship, a collaboration with Microsoft's Office of Responsible AI that brings together experts from the Global South to share best practices, experiences, and knowledge with each other. We've been running the fellowship for 2 years now and are very excited to be entering the third. So please do stay tuned for some announcements and some wonderful new fellows who will be joining the cohort this fall. Throughout the fellowship, we've held closed briefings where fellows share their work with each other. And today is going to be the first time that we're opening up one of those briefings to the public. And so I'm honored to introduce our two speakers today, both fellows and incredible participants in this program. First, we have Narun Popatanachai, who's joining us from the government of Thailand, where he serves as Director of Impact Assessment and Evaluation of Law in the Office of the Council of State. And next, we have Jibu Elias, who is joining us from India. Jibu is an AI ethicist, activist, and researcher who is widely recognized as the foremost authority on India's AI ecosystem. He currently leads the Responsible Computing Challenge at the Mozilla Foundation in India and was one of the chief architects of India AI. I'd also like to flag that Jibu has just published a case study on India's AI policies on the Stimson website, which we'll link in the chat. We also have a new revamped webpage for the Responsible AI Fellowship that I encourage you all to check out. And then Narun will also be publishing a case study on his own work on our webpage in the coming weeks, so please stay tuned for that as well. So as you all know, today's session will cover the deployment of AI in the public sector and ask the question of how AI can be used for public good by governments around the world. During today's event, Narun and Jibu will each share a presentation on their own work on AI in the public sector. I'll then ask them each a few questions before saving some time for audience questions at the end of the session. If you do have a question, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A box and we'll do our best to get to it. So I think that's it from me on the administrative side. And with that, I'm thrilled to hand it over to Narun, who will kick us off with a demo.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Stimson Center, for the opportunity. Let me pull up my slide and we can get going. So my name is Naran, as Juliet said. I'm from Thailand. And we have been running this project for the past 11 months, so less than a year. So it's we don't really want to brand this as an AI project. It's basically an initiative that we would like to solve a problem within public administration here in Thailand, right? But we identify that AI could be potentially a good tool, a good technology that we could leverage for the solution to the problems that we have. So, and the project is basically really not about any particular event as such, but it's about a government in a country where we don't speak English. We have a set of our own rules that we want to comply ourselves with international standards, recommendations, and rules. How do we do it? In the past, it's manual labor work. So we have to understand our own internal context, internal rules, and then we have to understand international rules in the foreign language, typically in English. And then we have to make sense of the gap between these two sets of rules, right? This creates a lot of problems. First, language barrier. Not a lot of Thai civil servants can speak well in English. Second, in Thailand, we have a lot of rules, primary legislation, regulations, bylaws, and all of that. There's a lot of set of rules. International organizations as well. They tend to have a lot of recommendations, standards. And so how do we cross these two sets of data together? And that's basically what our project is about. We use OECD, which is an organization that prescribe a lot of recommendation standards for other countries, a lot of countries to follow as a test case. The idea is that we want to cross the database of Thai law on, I think, your right-hand side with the OECD legal instruments on the left-hand side, use AI basically to find the gap in exact same area. For example, if you think about the area of the regulation of industrial waste into the water bodies of water. There are a set of regulations on both sides of the data sets. How do we know whether there's a gap? So that's basically the gist of the project. And so we design the project such that we can rope in all of the relevant government agencies that can then provide information in terms of their own rules, regulations, bylaws, and all of that standards within our own jurisdictions. And then we cross that with the OECD recommendations and rules. So these are basically, I just want to go through very quickly. So these are basically the steps that we want to do. If you can probably see, there's a lot of human figures around the framework. This basically means that we don't really trust the system, and not because we didn't decide it well. We did the best we could, but we believe in human interaction, human validation of the outcome of whatever the system gives to us. Whatever AI can produce, we want human to be the last person to check on the final result. So you can see that at every single step, we design such that we have government agencies come in and validate and verify the result of the work that the AI produce from the data set that we provide to the system. That's why there's a lot of human figures everywhere in the system. If in the audience, if you are lawyers, you would know that Excel is our enemies. We hate Excel as a lawyers. But since I started the project, I've been immersed myself in Excel, XML, JSON, and all of those database type file systems for quite a bit, and realized that it's actually quite useful. So the way that this works is that we design the way that government agency can come together and give information and store information in an Excel file. Very, very useful in as a starting point for the AI to then rationalize and understand the context of the law. And then we create a template of how the gap analysis report should look like, drawing from the information that is stored in the Excel format, as you've seen before, right? So this is basically the idea. Cognizant of the time that I have, I just would like to basically go through the demo and show you how all of these actually work. Bear with me one moment. Before I actually show you the demo, I want to show you the actual file. One second, let me pull up. So these would be a typical information set or data set that we receive from government agencies here in Thailand. Of course, they don't really know how to make this type of data input, but we create a repository or a portal for them to store the data. I hope you can see an Excel appear on the screen. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot of parameter. There are actually 51 of them. These are the type of information that we require from government agencies to inform us about a certain topic. You know, whether there's a law that speaks about a certain topic, whether there's a policies or recommendations or guideline that government or government agencies speaks about that particular area, right? And then we want them to explain a little bit more how they actually use or implement those body of documents. And so we receive these data and we collate and collect them into a database like this. And then we developed a system that can actually understand these type of file. So hopefully you can see this is it's a demo, but it's actually real. So I will use one of the files that I pull up for you just now and have AI work through the file. As you can see, it's actually working. So at first, the AI would try to make sense of all 51 columns in the Excel file. Typically, in each of the file will contain about 1,000 data points, okay? Which is organized in that 51 type of data set, okay? And it would try to make sense, you know, whether these data set talk about law, this data set talk about policy, or some other type of document and try to make a relationship between each and every single data that they have. And the way that we instruct AI to do is to find the keywords. Okay, so just go back to the example that I gave earlier about release of industrial waste into the environment. We want to know whether in the international recommendations, what kind of keywords that international organizations are looking for. For example, are they looking for um, uh, um, obligation for the factory? They're looking for the standards of the water, or they're looking for the type of chemicals. Once the machine collates all that data, one second, we can see that they are now 358, I hope you can see, 358 data set that has been rearranged into keyword-led group. For example, the first keyword that they're looking for is quality assurance. The second one, good lab practice. So, and they will pull all the data relating to each particular keywords and group them into this systematic way. And altogether, with these particular topic, there's 358 keywords. So there's 358 data sets. Okay, and now we instruct the AI to select 358 data sets are too much. 358 keywords, we can't work with that as a person. We're too lazy than the machine, right? So we want them to filter it for us. And the way that we instruct the AI to filter is to look for example, if there are any keywords that are repetitive. Maybe it's the same meaning, but just different words, quality control, quality assurance, for example. We want the AI to group these keywords for us, right? If there's anything that is lightly mentioned, maybe we can disregard. So these are the type of reasoning that we give to the AI. And if you can see from the screen, it's now doing what we call auto-selecting. So starting to select keywords and disregard certain keywords and trying to filtrate or triage out of 350 keywords into probably, hopefully, less number of the keywords than that. So bear with the system for a little bit. How can I say, at the moment, everybody want to use AI, and AI token is actually quite expensive, and that's why it take quite a few minutes to start to analyze everything together. But basically, that's the idea. We want to make sure that we can create these first draft of gap analysis between law, policy, and regulation in the domestic context in Thailand, and cross that with international obligations that we have to follow. Hopefully, we can see the gap where we are as a country vis-a-vis, the obligations or recommendations of that particular organization. It just so happened that at the moment in Thailand, we are aspiring to join the OECD, the Organization for Economic Development and Economic Cooperation and Development. And so we use OECD as our test case, but this approach can be used for anything. We can, if this sort of, work out well, we can try to, take, for example, the UN model law. We can take the UTO law and try to cross it with our domestic data set. Now the machine finished auto selection, and let's see, from 358, now we have keywords down to 82. So that's already, quite significantly reduced in terms of number of keywords. And as I said, the way that it selects is to find, something that is similar to each other, maybe something that's slightly mentioned. They can disregard if anything that is mentioned quite a bit in the data set, they can sort of make it more prominent, for example. But now it's down to 82. And the next part is the translation. As I told you before, one of the problem here in Thailand as a non-English speaking country is that we have to work with these documents from non-English speaking standpoint. So we want to make sure that our expert, who are the expert of the subject matter, but might not be fluent in English, to be able to interact, to converse about the subject matter in the language that he or she is most comfortable with. So we embed this translating module into our AI system as well to make sure that it can translate between Thai and English, right? So at the beginning, it would trying to structure this data in a way that they can sort of find a way to translate, right? And compose now the paragraph to start forming that report for us. As you can see, at the beginning, the report will be formed or written or produced in Thai. I hope that there are Thai the fellow Thai citizens in the audience, but if not, these are Thai. And the next step is the machine will then translate into English. It's 82% complete, so bear with it for a minute. Just to give you the idea, this type of gap analysis usually take a lawyer about a day or two. We can do this within 5 or less minutes. So that's the productivity gain that we get from basically using sort of AI system to help with at least the first draft. We're almost there. One moment. I think we paid Microsoft this token already, so it should work. One second. So the basically what we want to do is that we want to create a document, right, that can explain this gap for Thailand. So these will be the information that inform our government of what is the next step that we should do in terms of trying to comply with international standards, or if we want to be if there's anything that we actually have done better than what is required or what is recommended from the international organization, then we can contribute back to the forum. So as you can see, the paragraph composer is now finished. So they have already created a document in Thai, the system, and now it's translating, trying to translate the Thai version now into English. So if you can see, now we have the Thai version and we have the English version, right? And hopefully, okay, complete. So eventually, this is a document that we receive, and we can show the document in English and also in our original language, which is in Thai. But the most important, or at least the most interesting part for me is the JSON file. So if I'm not sure if you, Julia, can you see scramble of letters and words on the screen? Yes, okay. So this is what the machine can read. So we can actually plug this into whatever system that we have that can, help analyze further this gap from, the system standpoint. But for human, this is the document that's actually produced by the machine, AI. If you can see, the sentence is quite well formed. Next step is for us, the human, to come and check for the quality control. So with that, not sure if I goes over time, but that's basically what we have done so far. So next step is we would like to produce this type of document for almost 300 policy areas that we have to assess ourselves with the international standards and move forward with trying to be more compliant with the global standards. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Darun. I know it's always fascinating for me to see how the technology works under the hood. So thank you so much for the demo. In the interest of time, I'm just going to hand it right over to Jibu. I don't know, Jibu, if you're able to hop on with your presentation. And then, as I mentioned before, after Jibu presents, I'll ask them a couple of questions before opening up to the audience. All right, Jibu, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Julia and Arun. Brilliant work and more power to you. I hope you can see my screen. So I don't have anything innovative as Narun has demonstrated. Very quite a difficult task following him. But I just want to give you some of the lessons we can learn or we have observed in deploying AI for public good, especially in India. So one of the primary focus when it comes to AI for public good from an Indian perspective is something we call the digital public infrastructure, the DPI. And essentially, to those who haven't are not familiar with this term, it is a set of foundational digital systems that form the backbone of modern society, right? Enabling secure and seamless interactions between people, business, and government. So this translates into many forms in India, and I have few examples here. Not AI, but generally how digital public infrastructures work in India and why it is important. One key aspect is that, as you know, India has a 1.3 billion population, and building this kind of technology, which can scale up fast, reach more user base, is always beneficial when it comes to the governance aspect and service delivery part. So one good example is Aadhaar, which is the biometric unique identity, digital identity system. So we don't have something like a social security number in US, but we use Aadhaar as an equivalent. And it's a biometrical system, and and as a result, the verification happens whether if you're applying for a new SIM card for phone number, you just give your Aadhaar number, they will verify your fingerprint and verify it's you. And it's been used across the country in terms of most importantly, in terms of direct uh, benefit transfers. So many welfare programs in India, I think before Aadhaar, there were, I mean, let's say it was very generously allocated because so many people were getting the benefits who might not fall under the deserved category. So Aadhaar became that particular gatekeeper, which now can assess who are the real people deserving the particular welfare schemes. So that's where Aadhaar came in. And another part is called UPI. UPI is a payment platform. So one thing, India before 2016, India had a very unorganized financial sector. Even now, less than 9% of the population uses credit cards, and the credit card usage is very less. And even before 2016, a lot of people kept money as cash currencies, and the banking system, many of them were outside the traditional formal banking systems. And then we had a demonetization, and afterwards uh, most of the people got into the banking system. Now the question is, if your people are not using credit card, how do you do uh, cash payment, transfer payment? And that's where and UPI came in. UPI is a very simple way of doing that. And right now you just scan a QR code in a store, the money is sent. It has been a game changer, and you can use it with any smartphone. And I think over 10 billion monthly transactions are happening these days, which pretty much changed the landscape, and and that has created a significant economic opportunity across the country. So these are the two examples of overall digital public infrastructure. Now let's look at how AI plays into this public good efforts as well. So some of the use cases in AI in India, I mean, there are a lot of use cases of AI being deployed from crowd management to farmers advisory. So I will take you through some of them. AI for cataract detection. I think I will go in detail into that another slide. There are many cases, for example, tuberculosis screening, crop advisories. That's been a very prominent way because in India, the farmers are still not very tech savvy. So you have this AI advisory systems which operate in the front end. It will be just a text message, but on back end they will have highly predictive weather forecasting and other things, mostly in partnership with tech companies like Microsoft and others as well. So this has been a critical point and many pilot programs has worked. And similarly, another area where AI tools been deployed is in giving credit score for farmers. And as I mentioned before, because the farmers doesn't have a credit card and it's very difficult to assess a credit score when they come from agricultural loans and other things. So now we are using AI to assess the total output of their farmland and the size of their farmland to assess a credit equivalent score for that. Similarly, a few years back, a disaster warning system was developed especially for flood prediction in the state of Bihar, where Ganga, the largest river in India, second largest river in India, which overflows regularly. I think it was done in partnership with Google, and another effort was a Better Cotton initiative. So this is something which has been an early effort done on an AI for good, in partnership with one of the state called Maharashtra, where Mumbai is. They developed something called Better Cotton initiative. It was done by a non-profit called Vadwani AI. So what was happening was cotton farming is a main source of income for a big part of farmers in the state. And due to climate change, there has been a lot of unpredictability in terms of farming experiences. For example, normally you will know what are the kind of pests that will invade your crops, what are the kind of insects that will come. And this kind of know-hows were passed on generation by generation, family by family. But as a result of climate change, now you are seeing new kinds of pests, and the patterns have changed, and the remedies are also changing. So that's where this effort came into place, where you can take the picture of the pest and it will analyze the pest, it will give you advisory, and it will optimize your farming system, yielding, and overall environmental impact as well. Then there is Bashini, which is a very, very good example of DPI, which I will go into a later slide. And then there are many cases of AI being used for crowd management to manage Kumbh Mela, which is a huge gathering of devotees in Uttar Pradesh, or whether it's cricket matches or any other festivals. These days, AI being used for similar things. So already AI is being used and deployed in small use cases, even in traffic cameras and other things as a uh, AI for good initiative. Now I will get into two of the ones I was mentioning before. One is called Bhashini. So Bhashini is an effort to build a large language translation system. I think Narun earlier pointed out what happens when countries like India and Thailand, where most of the people don't speak English. In India, I think 10% of the population can handle English very well. And we have 20 official language and at least 100 other languages in the country. So in that case, how do we ensure that the benefit of this kind of technologies or these platforms reach every single person in the country? And that's where something like Bhashini comes into place. So Bharshini has been in effect for a few years, trying to create this elaborate translation system, and many entrepreneurs, researchers has been leveraging this technology to build the translation layer for many tools. I think in an earlier presentation I did for this particular program, I mentioned an application called Jugalbandi, which was a WhatsApp based advisory tool. So if you are if you are let's say if you are a normal citizen and you want to benefit a government program, you could drop a voice message in your own native language in a particular number, and then that voice message is transcribed. and then it is run through Bashani's translation layer, then a GPT API where it is trained on all the government programs, and then you get a reply in the same format. So this was a game changer, and Bashani layer was a very important there. Now, I think Bashani is focusing more on ensuring that the language data sets or corpus is collected for like under-resourced languages as well. There are languages which doesn't even have a formal script in India, so that's one focus. Another case is the case of e-Parway, which is a cataract detection tool deployed by another state where one of the big challenge in India, I think the leading cause of preventable blindness in India is cataract. And one of the reasons for that is the lack of diagnostic at the right time. And in India, for every 200,000 people in urban area, you have access to one eye doctor or an ophthalmologist, and that number gets much worse if you go to the rural area. So eParway was an effort by the state government of Tamil Nadu, where they worked with a non-profit and a startup to build a tool which you can install on an Android phone. And now you don't need an ophthalmologist. You can just go to house by house, take the pictures of your eyes, and it will give you a uh, evaluation of the cataract. What is the how severe it is, and it even connected with a data bank and help schedule even cataract surgery with the government hospitals as well. So these are some of the really great examples when AI is put to use for public good. So that's what I was, as I said before, right? AI plus DPI is an amazing combination, and I think that's what India has been trying to do, and India is demonstrating at this point, right? And it focuses on citizen-centric benefit, fast service delivery, and many countries, especially in global south or countries like India, are known for its red tapeism, which we inherited from the colonial overlords we had. So those things have a way of slowing down administration service delivery. This also lead to lower transaction costs, corruption to an extent, and expanded inclusions of marginalized communities as well. And similarly, now the government, especially with the India AI mission and Bashini and others, are also working with industry and civil society collaborators in the same manner as which. One good example is AI for Bharat, which is a open source effort to create language corpus for local languages. And it's interesting that a language like Thai, for example, I think is represented around 6% of the internet, while an Indian language, Hindi, comes around 0.3, if that statistics is still relevant. So there's a serious lack of language corpus to train these models in Indian language, and that's where AI for Bharat came in. And I think there are other efforts as well called AI Kosh, which is another data collection effort by India AI Mission, and the other way is making GPU access. As we have seen, it's the one of the most scarcest resource right now, and the government has procured over 34,000 of the top NVIDIA H100 GPUs, and now it's giving access to researchers and institutions for 64 under $1 an hour. So that's the other thing that's been happening. So I will stop here and we'll look forward to Julia taking over this conversation.
Thank you so much, Jibu, and thank you, Narun, for your fantastic presentations. I'm looking forward to asking you both a couple of more questions about them. And as I said, I see some people have already been leaving questions in the chat, but please feel free to do that throughout this discussion as well. So I'm going to start with a pretty basic question that is kind of like a stage setter for the rest of the conversation. I'd love it if you both could chat a little bit more about kind of the risk and opportunity analysis that governments need to do when they're thinking about using AI. So what are the positive outcomes that governments aspire to? Jibu, you mentioned that a little bit in your presentation just now, but then also what are the key risks that are kind of government specific that need to be considered?
Okay, I will go first. So I just want to start with this analogy. Luc Julia, I don't know if you're familiar, he's a French-American computer scientist and one of the creators of Siri, the Apple one. So he always mentions this analogy of a hammer. AI is like a hammer. It depends on who holds it, right? If a carpenter holds it, he can create things, or he can put a nail in a wall, but if it's in a handle of a serial killer, it's a different scenario. So AI is pretty much like that. Many technology is like that as well. So AI in government, I would say, is a double-edged sword in that way. While on the opportunity side, it's brilliant. It allows governments to deliver service at scale, as I mentioned before, right? And cut transaction costs and make systems more efficient in place, right? Like uh, technologies like I know we are all speaking about generative AI these days, but AI existed before that as well. So technology like predictive analytics can actually have a significant effect in health crisis, climate shocks, infrastructure management, and while digital interfaces, right, can make many services more accessible. So at the same time, the risks are also very serious. So I'm working on a book right now, and one of the chapter is called "Dictator's Dream and Democracy's Nightmare," where it started off with a hypothetical conversation I had with a colleague about how will Saddam Hussein would use AI in this modern day, and that was scary. But then you realize that you don't have to think about Saddam Hussein. Many governments are deploying AI in similar ways, right? One of my biggest fear when it comes to AI, many people raise bias as the risk, but bias by exclusion is what I fear the most. But at the same time, we have seen this movie before, right? It's easy to put the blame on a machine than on a human. And there are use cases in the 80s and 70s of the operation research models deployed in the US, in New York and Bronx and all, where a mass gentrification process was enabled. And when it was questioned in the court, the answer was no human was involved. How does it can be biased? It's a statistical model that provided the insight or the action. So that's a big risk and challenge. Secondly, the black box component, right? The black box, many of the AI tools we have seen lacks the explainability that which erodes trust, and the worst is use of AI for surveillance without the right safeguards, right? And so many government also get. One more point I wanted to mention is this is the something that mostly we overlook is that many projects get stuck in pilot level, right? And it will be about inauguration, it will be about hyping up the project, then everybody forgets about it, and projects makes a slow death, right? So that has happened a lot of time, and I have also seen across global south how the politics plays into a role. For example, in India, one of the states developed a AI tool in healthcare, which was incredible, and their team was willing to offer to every other state in the country. But the other state who came, the state B who wanted to use that AI tool, doesn't want the branding of state A. They said, we will take the tool, we will take the technology, but we will rebrand the whole thing. And it led to a lot of argument, and the state A asking, okay, you can do that, but keep the same essence. So essentially, the state B went out and built the same tool with a different team. It's two double the expenditure, and in the end none of them worked out, right? So this kind of politics also plays into it. So that's another. So the lesson is simple here, right? AI can multiply state capacity, but it can just easily multiply harm if the governance and accountability don't keep the pace. And we know that our policymakers, any country in the world, they will only wake up after when something goes wrong. So
Great.
No,
Thank you,
I,
Jibu.
yeah, I echo a lot of what Jibu just said, and just want to add that for my experience, there are three steps in creating an AI system or AI tool. You have the data input phase, you have the model development phase, and you have the application phase. Each of these steps can create mishaps, right? At the beginning, if you input garbage, then the result will be garbage. At the beginning, in the middle, if you develop badly your model, the brain won't work effectively. Whatever the application won't be as good, right? So it's come down to the design questions to me, right? If you are concerned about data privacies, of course, and there are a lot of discussions to be had about that. If you're concerned about risk in the AI maybe creating some kind of result that could create damages, then definitely there are conversation to be had. But if you make sure that whatever you input at each of these 3 steps are at least risk controlled, I think eventually you design a system that is already risk control from the very beginning. So, for example, the example that I presented today, information that we use at the beginning are all public information. It's information about law, policy, regulations. These are all public information. It's widely available. We just construct it and keep it in a neat way so that the machine can read. The brain or the model, we want the AI to perform a very specific task. Find synonyms, find the same keywords, distinguish between opposite words from each other, things like that, right? So we don't give the machine or give AI a lot of freedom to think on its own, right? So by design, these systems to be quite tightly controlled, we hope that we reduce risk of the result being too broadly created, too freely created. And then at the very end, as I hope you remember one of the charts that I show, we have a lot of human interaction or human supervision at every single step to supervise the end applications of the AI products. So like what Jibu said, AI is just one of the tools. It has good things and had bad things. It just depends on how you apply and how you design the whole system to make sure that you get the right result. You can't use these tools for every single possibilities and hoping for the right result all the time. It's the small step that was done right and combine all those small steps together to get a good result.
Great, thank you both. I have sort of a follow-up question to both of you, building on kind of the human in the loop discussion of like, let's make sure that we have as much oversight and as much engagement. I think zooming out of the system itself, it's also really important to have stakeholder engagement at large. And so having civil society and the private sector, Jibu, in your presentation, you mentioned a lot of the ways that the private sector is also contributing to AI for the public good. And so I'd love to hear your perspectives on how your respective governments are doing in terms of, first of all, cultivating that stakeholder engagement, and second of all, if there are any kind of examples of really robust stakeholder engagement and participation that you're seeing around the world in other jurisdictions.
Do you want to go first, or I can go first? Okay. So from my end, I mean, in terms of engagement, because the project is basically among government agencies, the way that we engage our stakeholders at the moment is to make sure that all of the government agencies are roped in as much as possible. I think, and this goes to one of the questions that was posted on a Q&A session. I just want to re-share my slide, which is this particular screen. So if you can see the colors in these shots, these colors actually represent government agencies. It will show in the system. I mean, the demo that I just showed you doesn't really show the color coordinated or the color highlights, but in the final product, the idea is that we can show from the final result report which sentence comes from the input of which government agency, to create that link that there's contribution from the agency to the final result. And not only that the agency can feel that they make the contribution, but we can create that responsibility or that linkage in terms of, if anything goes wrong or if there's any incorrect information, we know the source of the information. So basically, that's how we think about stakeholder engagement involving those who are who are related to the data, the model development, and the application into the picture.
Yeah, so coming from a maybe a larger, broader macro level perspective, I think one of the challenges India had for a long year was how everything was siloed, right? I mean, if you look at US, I think a big advantage they had was this collaboration between the public sector, academia, and the private sector. Because if you go back, the Dartmouth workshop, we all look at as the begin, the where the AI journey began. It was a DARPA funded workshop, if you remember. And even the early stages of AI, even in US and UK, most of the funding came from the government side into the academia and private research centers. So if you read about the AI winter, the first AI winter, it's a British report by a civil servant called Linglith that led to that AI winter, the end of the funding in that period. But coming to the reality is, yeah, so we says this in India. India is data rich and technologically poor. We have the kind of data that is diverse in many way, right? The diversity in this country and the scale, right? I mean, we keep telling, if you can access a 10% of the market or 1% of the market, that itself is a millions and hundreds of millions of people, right? So for many years we had this challenge. Academia did their thing in their silos. Private sector did their things, then startups was doing their own thing. But recently what we are seeing is this larger stakeholder effort coming here in India. And in India, open APIs are coming. Uh, Digital public infrastructure approach also has encouraged startups and innovators to build solutions in a massive scale, right? And there are ministries, like especially the Ministry of Electronics and IT, which is the main IT, which regularly do consulting with civil society, whether it's about AI safety institutes or anything related to. So the public consultation has become a very regular part of numerous ministries in India, right? And this engagement, even if it still is uneven, um, but it kind of provides grievance redress systems as well. So that's another thing that's been happening. And look at the recent efforts by India AI mission, right? The procurement of GPUs. The government procured the 35,000 GPUs, and then it ensured it allocated to the right parties, which wouldn't have been an easy task if completely done alone by a private player. So these are some of the interesting ways in which it's happening in India. But at the same time, if you look beyond countries like India and Thailand, there are other cases of strong stakeholder engagements. You can't have a conversation on this without mentioning Estonia, and how its culture of co-designing services with citizens has been a role model for every other country. Uruguay has a AGE SIC model. Rwanda is doing some pioneering in this space with a lot of pilot projects and it's scaling, right? And let's not talk about China because they're doing so many things. So, but coming to this public sector engagement and stakeholder engagement, I think there are so many examples that are happening, and I think we are all in this process. We're realizing that that's a right way to go, and many and it's early stage, and I hope there will be more progress in that space as well.
Great, thank you so much. Recognizing that we're approaching time, I'm going to turn now to a couple of questions from the audience. I'm going to combine two questions to ask to you first, Narun. I think first it would be great to hear more about the performance of the model that you were demoing for us. So how does the AI system do in terms of translating between Thai and English? What is the accuracy that you've been able to find? And then secondly, how much testing did you guys do, and how much testing did you see as necessary, and what's the acceptable level of failure in testing that model?
Yeah, I mean, expectedly, the English version is much more polished. We can see the level of sophistication in the way that AI can push out English language document than in non-English language document. In the Thai version, while the translation keep the exact same meaning, the way that some of the sentences are phrased is more akin to, I would say, a freshly graduate first year associate. It feels like you are full of knowledge, but you don't know how to put it together quite yet. So the sentences can seem a little bit sort of over here and under there, you know? So but something that is of note is that if I think if we did this, say last year or the year before, the Thai product, the Thai report would have been read in a more robotic way. The way that the language is put together, it's much less human-like. Now, I read the Thai version and I can see, I mean, if without knowing, I would not have thought that this is written by a machine. I would have thought that it would written by a 20 years old, 21 years old who never worked before, full of, theoretical knowledge, but doesn't know how to put it together. It's a progress, but it's not a perfect, outcome just yet. But it's good enough for us right now because the final result that we need at this moment is the English version. The Thai version is basically just to make sure that our local experts can understand the context, understand what is asked of them, right? So it's the 90% accuracy will do, right? But we want the 100% for the English version. So, and that's why at this moment, we taste a lot for the English result, English version, English language result. And we are quite pleased with it at this stage. It took us about 4 months. So it's this transition between GPT 4.0 to GPT 5 that sort of, I think in this range from 4 and 5, these are the right sort of result already for producing a very natural English language product. And so for us at this moment for polishing is up to a very, very good level. In terms of the accuracy, in terms of information, as I said, because we control, we don't really allow the machine to think freely quite that much yet. Maybe because we know exactly what we want. So the way that we program or the way that we prompt the system, we make a very specific instructions, a set of very specific instructions for them. So the chance for a deviation or hallucination is quite limited. In the past 6 months that we've tasted, we have not actually seen something that is way off the line. So, at this moment, we are quite happy with the result that we have. But you never know. So, right, we keep trying, we keep tasting, and we see if it will keep improving or we need to fix something in the future.
Great, thank you, Narun. And then Jibu, I want to ask you sort of the same question, but there was a question in the chat about bias and how to decrease bias in the justice system. And I thought it would be helpful if you could talk a little bit about how that testing and accuracy threshold looks when you're thinking about a highly consequential decision, like in the criminal justice sector, and when there are biases that may be incorporated that maybe affect everyday people. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, it's a very important question, I would say, right? I mean, bias in general, in terms of AI, can be classified into three: systematic bias, computational bias, and human bias. And this is where historical bias, or we call the bias of the archives, came into place, right? And any model built on, let's say, historically policing data or judicial data risk reproducing the biases and blind spot the systems as been doing. So, and we have seen this playing out in US years ago, right? In Florida with the Compass tool, which was used to provide, which was, I think parole for prisoners, and it was very much biased against the black population. And if you look, it's over and over again, right? If certain neighborhoods where there is caste or religion or socioeconomic groups are always over policed historically, and any algorithm trained on those records will tend to overflag this particular group of people, right? And we have seen this same movie play out multiple times again, especially in terms of race in the Western world. But I'm afraid this will play out in a way of caste and religion in the Indian community as well. And but to reduce these harms, as the question is about, we should treat all these tools as assistive investigative tool, right? Not an automated decision maker. If you remember a few years back, I'm trying to pull out the exact name. There was this arrest of a gentleman wrongly arrested in US, and I think his name was Robert Williams, and uh, it was a tragic event. And when it was an image detection failure, and we have known from time and time again that many algorithms do a bad job when it comes to image recognition of people with darker skin tones, people from Black community, and yet the police units dependent on identifying a criminal fleeing a crime scene and wrongly identified this gentleman. And when he asked, after getting free, he asked why. They said the machine said it is you. Right now, that's the scariest line there, right? So that's why these things should be treated as an assistive tool, not as an automated decision maker, right? And there are so many practical safeguards we can look into, like a public independent audit of the data and model before deployment, routine measurement of false positives as well as false negatives, right? Disaggregated by all these relevant groups, and importantly, mandatory human verification before any enforcement action. So those are very important, but I don't know how many of these government authorities will be open to this kind of auditing and other things, right? And accessible redress mechanism is very important for people who believe they have been wrongly flagged. Right now, it is like you dump it to AI, let it take care of AI. There is no human, and it starts from even simple customer services, right? There is no human. You can't access a human. In many cases, you are running in loop, talking to a chatbot. So and finally, this project, whether it's the one from UP government or any other country, should have a clear model card, right, and data provenance statement, so civil society and oversight bodies can scrutinize assumptions, limitations, and intended uses as well. But with all these guardrails, these systems may provide useful intelligence while reducing the risk of all this historical injustice. But at the same time, I'm not optimistic that these government entities will go for that as well. Many of them prefer that opaqueness over transparency, unfortunately.
Thank you so much, Jibu. And thank you, Naroon. I think we are right at time. And I think we've run out of time for closing statements, but I really appreciate both of you coming on today and sharing your knowledge with us in the audience. To those in the audience, please do feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to connect you with our fellows and keep you engaged in these discussions. I think it's really important that these discussions be as open and inclusive as possible. And like I said, we're really excited to finally be sharing these presentations and briefings from our fellows. So please do stay tuned. We're going to have a couple of more sessions like this throughout the fall, and we really appreciate your